Welcome back, everyone, to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you all here for this masterclass, because today we are going to unpack the hidden mechanics of global trade. We're looking at the absolute fundamentals of transport management. Think of it as the invisible machinery that keeps our modern world running, keeps our grocery shelves stocked, and, of course, keeps businesses profitable.
To set the stage for our lecture today, consider this thought for a second. A developed country is not a place where the poor have cars. It's where the rich use public transportation. I love starting with this quote because it really elevates our thinking, right? Transport design isn't just about moving a box from point A to point B. It fundamentally impacts society, equity, and operational capability on a massive scale. It's a structural choice that literally defines how efficiently a country or even a company can operate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our syllabus for today's masterclass. We'll be covering the foundations of transport, evaluating the 5 modes, intermodal and container operations, cost calculation, and finally, the sustainable future.
Starting right off with Part 1, Foundations of Transport.
Let's start with the core principles here: network reach and operational design. At its heart, transport is driven by these 2 major factors. Network reach is exactly what allows fresh produce from Vietnam to arrive in Thailand at competitive prices. And operational design, well, that's how we choose the right mode and route to directly lower our costs. Now, when we talk about global logistics, we have to talk about scale. Just think about this number for a second: 90%. 90% of all international trade by volume moves by sea. Seriously, if you look around your room right now, it is almost guaranteed that the majority of what you see spent weeks on the ocean before it ever reached you.
All right, let's move on to Part 2, evaluating the 5 nodes. Let's look at how we actually move all these goods. We basically have 5 physical modes of transport at our disposal: road, water, rail, air, and the highly specialized pipeline. Each one of these modes carries a completely distinct cost, speed, and risk profile. As a logistics manager, your job is essentially being an expert matchmaker between the cargo's specific needs and the capabilities of these 5 modes. You're just constantly evaluating trade-offs to find that perfect fit.
Let's look a little closer at road. Road transport is the undisputed door-to-door king. It operates 24/7 and is really the connective tissue of the entire supply chain. I mean, almost every single shipment touches a road for its first or last mile. But it does have strict limitations, particularly when we talk about weight, which definitely drives up per unit costs. For instance, if we look at the statutory weight limits in Thailand, a 6-wheel truck maxes out at a 15-ton gross weight, while a massive 22-wheel trailer caps at 53 tons. You can't just infinitely pack a truck. The physical highway infrastructure literally dictates your business margins.
Now, when we compare all of these directly, we see that water is incredibly cheap, but it's very slow. But I want to ask you a question. Why would a business ever pay the absolutely massive premium for air freight? Well, if you look closely at speed and reliability, it makes sense. If you're shipping life-saving pharmaceuticals or, say, a multi-million-dollar batch of microchips, you aren't really paying for transport anymore. You're paying for speed, security, and the ironclad guarantee of a schedule.
Which brings us to Part 3, intermodal and container operations. This is all about creating seamless connections.
The absolute hero of this seamless connection is the humble container. In the industry, we measure it using a crucial term: the TEU, or 20-foot equivalent unit. It's basically the standard unit of measure based on a 20-foot-long container. These standardized rectangular steel boxes completely revolutionize global trade efficiency. Why? Because they allow a giant crane to lift the box off of a ship and place it directly onto a truck or a train without a single person ever touching the cargo inside.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that these containers aren't just empty steel boxes. They are highly specialized vessels. Take the garment container, for example. It literally has internal hanging rails, so fast fashion items can be transported all the way across the ocean without creasing. Or consider the bulk FlexiTank. It's essentially a massive internal liquid bag that instantly turns a standard dry container into a totally safe vessel for transporting bulk juices or non-corrosive liquids. It's brilliant.
When we move these containers across multiple modes, we're using what's called intermodal transport, and this comes with some fantastic, really quirky industry terms. Birdyback is air plus road. Think of high-value Thai jewelry being flown to the USA and then trucked for that final mile. Then there's piggyback, which is rail plus road, super great for heavy, dense goods like cement. And fishyback, water plus road, which gives you the incredibly low cost of sea freight combined with the direct door-to-door reach of a truck.
All right, moving on to Part 4, Calculating Transport Costs and Business Margins. Welcome to the math lesson portion of our masterclass. Look, at the end of the day, transport management is all about cost control. To price transport correctly and actually protect our business margins, we have to understand these cost structures. Fixed costs like rent, vehicle depreciation, and salaries, they don't change whether you drive 1 mile or 1,000 miles. Variable costs, however, things like fuel, tolls, and driver labor, those scale directly with the journey. This is exactly why logistics managers completely obsess over backhauls. If a truck delivers cargo and then has to drive all the way back empty, that return trip is generating zero revenue while burning pure variable cost waste in fuel and labor.
So, how do carriers actually charge for their space? Well, this brings us to the golden rule of thumb for logistics. Carriers look at two distinct numbers. First, gross weight, which is the actual heavy weight of the cargo when you put it on a scale. Second, volume weight, which is a calculated weight equivalent based on the physical dimensions. Basically, how much physical space the box takes up. And the golden rule, you always pay the freight charge based on whichever number is higher.
Let's act like we're at the whiteboard and explore a real-world step-by-step example together. Imagine we're shipping 4 large boxes of electronics from Bangkok to Japan. First, we calculate the volume weight using the box dimensions, which gives us, let's say, 480 kilograms. Second, we put those boxes on a physical scale for the gross weight, and it reads 460 kilograms. Third, we have to select our chargeable weight. Remember the rule? Pick the higher number. So we must use 480 kilograms. Finally, we multiply that 480 by our rate. Let's call it 50 Thai baht per kilo, resulting in a total freight charge of 24,000 baht. This is exactly why packaging design is absolutely crucial. If you leave too much empty space in your box, you are literally paying to ship air.
And finally, Part 5, the sustainable future and environmental impact.
For our final module today, let's step back a bit and look at the bigger picture. We need to adopt a highly analytical lens on how environmental realities are fundamentally reshaping the economics of all these transport modes. The stark reality is that transport has severe environmental consequences. It's a massive driver of greenhouse gases, air pollution, noise, and resource depletion. What is absolutely critical to understand as a manager is the lock-in effect. The structural choices we make today, like deciding to build highways instead of railways, or relying heavily on diesel rather than alternative fuels, those choices lock in these environmental impacts for decades to come.
And this brilliantly illustrates why technology and policy are completely changing the math we literally just learned. Digital AI routing creates way better efficiency, while electric vehicles can eliminate direct air pollution entirely. But also, notice carbon taxation. Policies like carbon taxes in the EU and Japan mean that emitting greenhouse gases will very soon carry a direct, unavoidable financial penalty. These aren't just nice-to-have environmental wins anymore. They are critical new variables in your transport cost calculations. Basically, high-polluting modes will simply become far too expensive to operate.
Which brings us to your final exam. Consider this your take-home assignment. Imagine you have 5 large boxes, 500 kilos gross weight, and you're shipping them to Germany at 70 baht per kilo. First, you'll need to figure out the volume weight to find the actual chargeable weight. But more importantly, I really want you to consider this second question. How can logistics firms move toward more sustainable transport while still maintaining those vital business margins we talked about? Thank you so much for attending today's masterclass. Go run the numbers and keep questioning the hidden mechanics of how our world moves.